Welcome to the Bowden Blitz College Football Playoff Edition. I'm Joe Lisi, joined by former National Coach of the Year, Terry Bowden. Coach, round two is in the books. We'll take a look at the updated odds now entering the semifinal playoff games. But give me your thoughts just overall about what transpired last weekend in round number two.
I tell you, it was some amazing things. I think Indiana established itself again exactly where they claimed they were. Most people thought they were, except Ohio State's been removed. I think now Indiana's been elevated. But after that, I think we've got the two probably teams that I may have ranked the lowest of the 12 in the Final Four. Miami and Ole Miss they were very good football teams, but it didn't look like they would be able to navigate through the playoffs. And now here they are back in there, and that's going to be a great game. And then Oregon is that little sleeper, that team that just dominated Texas Tech and made their offense look inept and incapable of scoring 23-0. And so again, it's got down to four teams. I think two of them we kind of expected they might be there. Two other ones that are playing lights out. And right now, it's all about who's playing the best lately, just as we saw in the Ole Miss Georgia games. Who's playing the best right now? And Miami and Ole Miss has really changed that a lot, I think.
It really does. And I think the biggest thing, too, is you look at the Big Ten overall, Coach. They've won back-to-back national championships with Ohio State and Michigan. They're guaranteed to have at least one team in the national championship with the square-off between Indiana and Oregon. It is a rematch that the Hoosiers won in Eugene 30-20. And when you look at the body of work of the SEC, right, Ole Miss is the one team, I think, out of the group that nobody gave a shot to potentially be in the Final Four. They were a 14-1 shot to potentially win a national championship, Coach. Just about 5 days ago, you see the price at plus 570. This team is playing with house money right now.
Well, when you line up against Georgia, a team that people perceived had the ability from a coaching standpoint, from a talent standpoint, to be in the championship, and you see the way Ole Miss played against them. Not only that, came back and beat them in the second half, beat them at the end of the game. And of course, their quarterback to me was lights out. They're a whole new football team. When you watched their quarterback play against Georgia and the way he played, and he's been good all year, but I thought he elevated his game to a point where everybody said, wow, with him playing like he played, they can beat anybody. So again, we got a different perspective. I think Ole Miss is I'm not sure they're not a team with the way Lane Kiffin walked away from them. They're not a team everybody kind of likes to see how far they can go without Lane Kiffin.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lane Kiffin did take the job at LSU, 7 years, $91 million. A majority of that staff is already potentially committed to be assistants for LSU in Baton Rouge, and that's going to be a problem potentially for Ole Miss right now. Will these coaches and coordinators potentially stay in Oxford and coach the Ole Miss Rebels in their semifinal playoff game against Miami? That remains to be seen, Coach. I've heard that Ole Miss is preparing a lawsuit, that some backers at least are hoping that the coaches can potentially, coach in that game to see the body of work done. I know Ryan Clark came out and said that, a former LSU Tiger. Give me your thoughts about the assistant coaches and where potentially their attention should be committed. Should it be with the Rebels? Or if they did in fact take a job with LSU, knowing that recruiting is a factor at this time of the year, where should their time be devoted?
But they should finish up with Ole Miss is what they do. If Charlie Weiss leaves early, it would be criminal. His play calling, the imagination, the way they created, the way they call plays and mixed it up, that was as big a story to me as a coach as it was the quarterbacking. And again, we already know he's going to LSU, but for the LSU or Lane Kiffin would be the one, I would imagine, to demand that he leave now. If that were to be the case, I think it would be very difficult on Ole Miss, but I think it would be it's unsportsmanlike. To me, it's everything you shouldn't do. I think let him finish. You've already got the head coach gone. Let the assistant coaches, they can't coach anywhere at LSU. They've got enough people working on recruiting and portal transfers. they should finish up.
We'll see how that situation plays out. Basically, over the next 4 or 5 days, it'll be national media recognition as this game gets closer on Thursday night. We'll also break down how about the transition of Curt Cignetti, coach? You saw him up, and we'll dive into that game in next segment, Indiana's dominance over Alabama. But to turn around this program in 2 years, I mean, Indiana was known, obviously, throughout the last 40 years as a basketball school. This was the biggest game. Curt Cignetti not only takes the Hoosiers to back-to-back college football playoffs, he now has them in the top 4. They have the best odds potentially to win a national championship. Just talk to me about the transformation in just 2 quick years coming from James Madison to what we see now in Bloomington. They're going to be a perennial power for years to come.
Yeah, I think that's the hardest thing for people to take, especially the people, the fanatics of college football in the South. Anytime you look at Indiana and say, "Oh, basketball school," they're not a football school. You can't get over that perception, and Cignetti is now making them do that of seeing Indiana as a power. And I'm gonna tell you, he wasn't born yesterday, but he's 62 years old. He's been a head coach at 3 different institutions. He's a son of a head football coach. He was mentored by Nick Saban. He's at Indiana at the right time in his career to have all of his preparation and maturity as a football coach. And so I think because a lot of people didn't know about him, and of course I did because of my background with his family. His father coached for my father at West Virginia. I played for his father. Grew up in the same town as Curt. I've watched how good he's won, where he's won, and known what he can do. But most coaches now also say no team really plays as fundamentally sound as they do. They not just have good football players, they do a great job of evaluating talent, which you've got to do at Indiana, because I don't think you can get high school talent and win like they do. You must evaluate portal talent. He's shown a great ability to do that. But most importantly, he runs a Nick Saban type operation. Everybody knows exactly what to do, and they better do it, or somebody else is going to be hired to do it for them.
And we'll see exactly what Indiana does in the rematch against Oregon. Coach and I will be on next week breaking down that game. That was a game that Indiana won, catching basically almost 7 points in that matchup. They won it by 10 in Eugene. They made second half adjustments, and Fernando Mendoza and the crew did step up in that matchup. Coach, thoughts about Miami's performance, big picture, and the fact that Texas Tech and Ohio State put a combined $63 million in NIL and were one and done in the college football playoff. Do you get everywhere with the money, or is it coaching too, because those kids didn't step up on Saturday afternoon?
Well, of course, Miami did step up and win with the money they put in. Texas Tech did not, but I would say Texas Tech made the mistake of not getting the quarterback. And Baron Morton's a good quarterback. But if it was so clear in that football game how much below Dante Moore that he is, how I don't want to say average, he's a solid quarterback. But when you're going to win a national championship, you better have something special. So I think their NILs made them a whole different team. And you can't say that they made mistakes. I just don't think they got the quarterback. He's been there with them. They stayed with him. And I think you've got to always evaluate to get the greatest quarterback you can get, no matter who you are, whether you're Georgia or you're Texas Tech. So again, I think Texas Tech got as far. They were kind of exposed by their offense by the best talented team of NIL talent at Oregon that they played all year.
When Coach and I return, we'll start recapping round number 2 of the college football playoff. Joe Lisi and Coach Bowden coming right back. All right, back on the Bowden Blitz, Joe Lisi and Coach Bowden recapping week number 2 and round 2 of the college football playoff. We left off talking about Dan Lanning and the Oregon Ducks. Throughout this game, leading up to it, we heard about the Texas Tech defense, one of the best front sevens in college football. Entering that game, Texas Tech had only allowed 64 rushing yards per game to opposing offenses and only 2.3 yards per carry. We said if Oregon could run it, most likely they would be within margin and potentially win this game in dominating fashion. Coach, their defense stepped up and made a statement early on. They shut out Texas Tech. This is an offense that was averaging 30-plus points per game, and the Ducks shut them out in dynamic fashion and win it in South Beach 23-0. Give me your thoughts about the Ducks and Dan Lanning's performance on Saturday afternoon.
Well, first of all, let's make sure we understand Oregon did a great job stopping the run, too. They held Texas Tech to 64 yards rushing. Texas Tech held them to 78. So both teams were held down in the running game. The fronts did that. But we talk about the difference in the quarterbacks. Dante Moore, when they couldn't run, he threw for, 245 as opposed to 137 for Baron Morton. But more importantly, you got 1 turnover for Oregon, 4 turnovers for Texas Tech, 2 interceptions, 2 fumbles, and that they got methodically beat by not running the football. And then they had a quarterback that could not could not make big plays, and that's not the way you're going to beat Oregon, who went out there and had a quarterback that could throw when the running game wasn't working for Oregon that much, the quarterback had enough talent and enough ability in the passing game to each time they turned the ball over, he turned those into points. And so that was the difference, the 2 quarterbacks and the overall offense against the defense in the passing game against Texas Tech.
To your point, Baron Morton was averaging well over 250 passing yards per game. Yeah. And to your point, Texas Tech was a balanced offense, rushing for over 200 and throwing for well over 250 against opposing defenses. Baron Morton, 18 of 32 in the matchup, only 137 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. They had a critical interception in the end zone by Oregon, and the Ducks really forced Texas Tech into long third down conversions. They forced them to methodically work down the field, and basically Baron Morton and the Texas Tech offense imploded in that matchup. Not only that, though, Coach, Texas Tech throughout the regular season did a fantastic job of dictating tempo. When they jumped up early, they were able to dictate and rely on their front seven led by David Bailey. They couldn't do that in this matchup, and that was really a testament to not only how Oregon played defensively, but the defensive game plan by Dan Lanning.
Yeah, I mean, not only that, though, I think you could see the talent. Texas Tech has not played a team in the Big 12 with the talent that Oregon has. So they went up against a different type of animal in that football game. And it showed, especially with Oregon's defense, with the skill of Oregon's quarterback and receivers and the way they played there. So Dan Lanning did a great job of taking what the defense gave him, using that, expanding that offense with the passing attack. And when they turn the ball over, forcing turnovers. And again, Morton's had a very good year. I mean, don't get me wrong. I just think when you watch that game, and you compared the 2 quarterbacks as the game progressed, you said, this guy's way up here and Morton's not quite there. And that really, to me, in a big game like this, who's got that quarterback that can create and can make plays? And I think that was one of the biggest differences in the football game, who had the ball in their hands the most, and that was the quarterbacks. Both had the ball, but Oregon's quarterback made the most plays.
They did. Let's take a look at Friday night's game. It started fast. Miami jumps up 14-0. It was a 14-point swing. Miami was up 7-0 late in the second quarter, and all of a sudden they get a pick six, takes it to the house, 70-plus yards, and that put Miami up 14-0. They don't look back. They win it by 10 points, in dominating fashion, Coach. This defense for Miami is hitting on all cylinders. Thoughts about the Friday night performance by the Hurricanes?
Well, 2 things I saw. We talked about how talented Miami is. We knew their offensive line was very talented. And again, you could see it. They rushed for 3 times the yardage at Ohio State. Ohio State ended up getting 45 yards rushing, 153 for Miami. So they won the rushing game and won the line of scrimmage with that strong offensive line. But not just that, they had 5 sacks. We said earlier that against Texas, against Indiana, when you had teams with talent, Sayan didn't really play as well, and he was really attacked. And when they didn't sack him, they put pressure on him, and that was a difference in the ball game. An inability to run, and then when they had to pass it in passing situations, they could not stop that defensive front. When you saw Bain getting that 3-point stance off that edge and dip under that deep offensive tackle, you knew that he was going to have a big day, and they could not protect their quarterback.
No, they couldn't. And we saw these teams that had first-round buys, Coach, outside of Indiana, come out very flat per se. They had to shake off the ring rust. Thoughts about preparation, because everyone lost except Indiana. Ohio State, we saw Georgia. We saw all these teams that had extra weeks of preparation in Texas Tech, and they could not find continuity or consistency offensively.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of those things that I downplayed it because back when I was coaching just a few years ago, we didn't have a playoff. We had a championship game, and so you had a month off. Back in the 90s and the turn of the 2000s, you had a month off, everybody, but both teams had a month off. So it kind of balanced out. Now we had teams that had 2, 3, and 3.5 weeks of preparation or time off, and the other team had time to stay sharp, that they didn't sit as long. And we have seen in I think all 4 games, the teams that sat lost. And we're seeing that that's a real factor. I know I would not want to sit 3 or 4 weeks. I think everybody is very comfortable sitting 1 week because that's what you do during the season. But over 2 weeks, that's a different animal. And we saw, I don't know if they're going to change that next year. I think that's one of those inconsistencies they have to look at.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be intriguing to see what they do from a format perspective. If they do expand to potentially 16 or 24 teams, how do they handle the bye? That's always something that I think everybody wants to see. You want to see the best product on the field. You do not want to see blowouts, especially in the second round of these games with top tier and top seeds going down. When we return, we'll talk about the 2 SEC games in round number 2. Coming right back. Back on the Bowden Blitz, Joe Lisi and Coach Bowden recapping round number 2 of the college football playoff. Left off talking about the 2 games, Miami and Ohio State, Oregon and Texas Tech. The biggest blowout came in the Rose Bowl, Coach. Indiana was a 7.5-point favorite in this matchup. We saw 6.5s at the start of the week. A lot of people were on Alabama thinking that they figured out their offensive woes in the road win over Oklahoma just about 2 weeks ago. Well, let me tell you, Fernando Mendoza and Indiana just beat down the Crimson Tide, one of their worst defeats in the history of Alabama in the bowl season. I mean, they're not used to this, losing to Indiana by 35 points.
Oh, I know it, and they won't. It won't be a nice offseason for Galen DeBoer, I promise you, because they'll have to live with that. It was just a deplorable game for Alabama because it was Indiana that looked like an Alabama of old. And I said all week last week of all the games that I thought this one had a chance to be a blowout. I didn't really think it would be as bad as this, but it was. And all you got to do is look at the problem Alabama's had all year. They rushed for 23 yards. It's just like the SEC championship game. It's the problem they had, and they rushed for 23 yards. Their total offense is under 300. And then you've got Indiana that's checking all the boxes. They run for over 200. They pass for almost 200, over 400 yards of offense, and they dominate the defense with their defense. Alabama just looked like they were on a field with a different level of football team. And I didn't think Alabama would be – I thought they would play closer, but Indiana put it on and just laid it to them. And so again, it's one of those situations where Indiana is doing everything like you need to do to be a championship team, whether it be throw. Some days you have to run it more than pass it. Some days you have to pass it more than run it, but you better be able to do both and stay balanced as much as possible because you never know in which game you're going to be called on to do one or the other. Indiana was able to do both, and that's why they have been so good this year.
I think Indiana resembles potentially what Alabama used to be with Nick Saban, right? Run the football, get solid quarterback play, be able to shut down the run, win the turnover battle. And if you could do that, you're going to win not just regular season and bowl games, you're going to win national championships. And that's exactly what Nick Saban did in his tenure in Tuscaloosa. And now we're seeing Curt Cignetti, the only team to come out of the bye week and dominate and cover the number, right. And he does it by a 35-point margin. His team didn't come out flat. They didn't show any weaknesses, and they proved why they were the number one overall seed in this college football playoff. They have now knocked off, both in back-to-back games, Alabama and Ohio State. If I would have told you that 4 or 5 years ago, would you have believed it?
No, it's just we still don't have that perception of Indiana is that they are not at that elite level. We all need to put that one to bed, and we probably could have put it to bed a long time ago. But that's exactly what they are. They are the elite team right now. Played Oregon, they played Ohio State, they played Alabama, and won all these football games. And it's been amazing. And they haven't lost a football game. And so again, now it's just a matter of he can keep them focused and locked in as they go through the rest of the season, because I know they will be favored from here on out. As long as they're still playing, they're going to be the favorite in those games that they play. But again, it goes back to not just the talent level, because I don't think that you're going to see them, of the 12 teams, that Indiana has more talent. They've got a quarterback that plays very, very good football, but I think they have the most talent that's fundamentally coached better than everybody else right now. That's what they are. And I think when Coach Saban won 6 championships at Alabama, we often had to say that they are so fundamentally sound in every area. Kurt was with Nick Saban for several years on his staff, and I think he picked that up. Attention to detail, fundamentally sound, do the little things, all those things that Indiana does correctly.
And when you look at Indiana, to just run the football with physicality, win at the line of scrimmage, that game was won in the trenches by the Indiana Hoosiers. They got after it and got after Ty Simpson. And after Ty Simpson left the game in the second half, they got after Austin Mack. And again, that was a real testament to how prepared Curt Cignetti and the offensive defensive staffs were against Kalen DeBoer in Alabama. To your point, it's going to be a long off season for Kalen DeBoer in Alabama, not living up to expectations, ending the year with, again, their 4th loss. We'll see exactly how it plays out, Coach, but it's going to be very intriguing the rest of the way for Indiana. Can they maintain the momentum, and can they potentially win their first national championship in over 50 years? We'll see. We'll come back next week breaking down the games. For Coach Bowden, I'm Joe Lisi. Have a great day, everyone.